I'm Jeremy Hobson, and this is the follow-up from the middle, where we bring more of your voices into the conversation on a new topic each week. And we are following up in this episode about autonomous vehicles, which are expanding rapidly across the United States. We're going to talk about safety, about trust, about jobs, and about whether they are in fact going to make our transportation system overall more efficient, affordable, and accessible. And to do that, we are joined now by Andrew Miller, author of the book, The End of Driving, as well as the Changing Lanes Substack. Andrew, welcome to the follow-up. Great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, and as somebody who has followed this so closely over the years, does this feel like a different moment right now with the rapid expansion, especially of these robo-taxis in cities across the United States?
It does feel like something different is happening. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was any number of people who were rapidly predicting that self-driving was about to arrive and change everything, and then it didn't. So I think a lot of people said, oh, that was just a fantasy or a con job, and forgot about it. And so they're not taking this present moment seriously, where Waymo is a roaring success in San Francisco. It's expanding its reach across the Bay Area. It's extending its reach across the whole U.S. Sunbelt, north to places as diverse as Denver or New York City, and internationally to London or Tokyo. It is not evenly distributed, but the trajectory is clear that self-driving is coming to the cities of the world.
The cities of the world, what about the suburbs and the exurbs and the other places? Are they going to come there as well?
If you look at every transport technology of the last couple of decades, whether that's shared bike systems or scooter systems or Uber, they always start in the downtown core of the big cities, because that's where the origins and destinations are densest, there's the most people, that's where you can start to make the most money. But over time, the service area extends outward, gradually to uncover the whole city, and eventually to the suburbs. And I predict that's what's going to happen with robotaxis as well. American suburbs are equipped to handle robotaxis. Now, rural America, will they get robotaxis? I don't know if we're going to see that in the next few decades. That doesn't mean we can't see driving automation in those places, privately owned vehicles, but robotaxis, there just aren't enough density of origins, destinations, and passengers out in the country to make that a money-winning proposition.
Do you see this expansion of self-driving vehicles having an effect for people who aren't using them? Is it going to have an effect on our traffic, for example?
I'm afraid that unless we change things, the advent of self-driving at scale is going to have mostly negative effects on people that aren't using them. You've mentioned traffic. It's certainly going to make traffic much worse. But it's going to have other effects that are less obvious too, which is the transit systems of the nation depend on having a large bulk of people using them. If a lot of riders defect to use robotaxis instead, that means that you have to get higher fares to offer worse service for everyone else. It's an unfortunate outcome. We don't have to be stuck with it. There are things we can do, but yeah, if we don't do anything, the outcome for a lot of people is going to be worse, I'm afraid.
Right. We saw in the pandemic, especially, more people making the move from maybe taking the subway to taking an Uber where they were going because they didn't want to be around a lot of other people and a lot of germs in that case. Do you expect then that the future of transportation, if we keep moving in this direction, is going to be more based on individual rides than public transit?
It's tricky. I'm a big fan of public transit. In fact, I spent 4 years designing a rapid transit extension for rapid busways. So I think that public transit is a wonderful feature of the contemporary city. I'm not here to say that it's terrible, but I am here to say is that it is not useful for a lot of people. Transit often doesn't start from where you are or go directly to where you want to go, which means you either have to walk a long distance, or you have to take a lot of transfers, or you have to wait a long time. And Uber solves that. robotaxis solve it even better because they're going to be something like 50 to 40% the cost of an Uber ride today. Under those conditions, it's often the rational thing to do would be to take a robotaxi rather than take public transit. So I think what public transit needs to do is either lean into what it's really good at, like subways or rails, where it's got its own right of way and can be fast and reliable than any vehicle, whether there's a robot behind the wheel or not, or public transit agencies have to decide that you can't beat them, join them, and get to work on embracing automated buses and automated shuttles for feeder service instead of having suburban buses that come twice an hour. That's the future, I think, of public transit.
Well, and when you talk about automated, we of course think about what that means for jobs. We heard from people that called into the show talking about that, including Uber drivers who of course make their living behind the wheel. Listen to this caller.
Hi, my name is Sam. I'm an Uber driver. I'm in Boise, Idaho. I mean, it's a mixed bag. I've taken Ubers as a passenger with some weird drivers. As an Uber driver, I've heard some weird stories from passengers. On the other hand, I've driven 8,000 rides already, haven't had one accident. Me personally, I probably wouldn't get in a Waymo because if something goes wrong, who the heck am I supposed to talk to? If it's an Uber driver, even if it's a bad one, at least there's someone you can tell what to do.
So he sees the benefit of having a human driver, but what about the issue of jobs? How much have you thought about what this move to autonomous vehicles, autonomous buses, autonomous trucks, autonomous taxis is going to mean for the millions of people who make their living as drivers?
Well, if I was really going to be hard-nosed, Jeremy, I would say if we're going to shed a tear for the ride-hail drivers, we should go back in time to 2012 when all the ride-hail drivers were displacing taxi drivers and shed the same amount of tears that we did then. Oh, wait, we didn't. We actually welcomed ride-hail, and ride-hail drivers welcomed the opportunity to take these jobs at the expense of an older, less efficient system. That's what Waymo is. It's the new entry that is going to displace an older, less efficient system. But Jeremy, I'm not hard-nosed. I'm a sweetheart. So what I would say is that I'm glad that our caller has made a success as an Uber driver. Most Uber drivers don't last that long. Most Uber drivers last less than a year before they transition to some other employment. The ones that stick around are the skilled professionals, and I'm sure that's who our caller was, is a capable driver who's responsive to the needs of his passengers. There will still be, for a long time, a desire for that kind of a service. Like, if my aged mother was going to be traveling somewhere, I would want her in a car with a human driver who could maybe help her get in and out of the vehicle. Lots of people like that. There's lots of demand for human drivers. What's going to happen is that as the robotaxis come in, the people who filter out every year, and it's like 9 out of 10 of them, just won't be replaced. So it's not going to come so much for people who have jobs now as there's just going to be fewer jobs of this sort in the future. And the ones that exist will be for professionals who will do a better job and will be paid more for it.
Like maybe the Uber driver will let you listen to your own music like they do in the Waymos right now. You just connect your Spotify in there and do it. Let's get to another caller. Listen to this.
This is Mark. I am currently on I-95 heading north in a Tesla in full self-driving mode. I've used this several times, but this has been driving for the past 12 hours from Tampa. Absolutely no problem with it. I have no fatigue. I'm seeing other drivers on the road swerving, even semis that appear to either be distracted or dozing or whatever. As far as learning the rules of the road and detecting and learning how the autonomous vehicles are going, I chuckle a little bit at some of the callers saying they need more time to learn. We have a lot of teenagers and even some adults that are still trying to learn. At least the autonomous technology is learning from other mistakes, and it's going to get better and better.
So a very pro autonomous vehicle person right there in their car in self-driving mode.
Yeah. I drive a Tesla myself, and I often use it's not full self-driving. It's the older autopilot system that is just driver assist. It can manage my adaptive cruise control. It can keep me in my lane. And I've used in the past, I've used full self-driving, which is what Tesla calls their really sophisticated automated driving systems. It's still driver assist. You still have to be, like our caller, hands on the wheel, foot on the brake, monitoring the situation. But it can do things like change lanes, make turns. It's a wonderful tool. I really enjoy my Tesla taking a lot of the burden of the driving task away from me. And so anyone who hasn't used it, I recommend that they do so. But we have to recognize that what Tesla is selling to you today is still, despite the name full self-driving, it is not an automated driving system. It's a driver assist system. There still has to be a human in charge. And if we elide that difference, it can lead us into confusions. A full self-driving system where a human's input is never required is a very sophisticated and difficult thing to deploy.
But it is being deployed right now with Waymos and other robo-taxis, so it feels like it can't be that far off from your Tesla being able to go into full self-drive mode.
Well, there's a question about this, because what Waymo does is it's got cameras, but it also has LiDAR and radar and sonar and a variety of sensing tools available to it. Tesla's philosophy is different. Tesla's philosophy is we only need cameras. So they would say something like, Jeremy, you have eyes and a brain. You don't have LiDAR, but you can drive. And so if Jeremy can drive with eyes and a brain, then a car can drive with cameras and a computer, and all the rest of that stuff that Waymo has is just frippery. It's unnecessary. And so that's how they think they're going to be able to get, Tesla's going to overtake Waymo and have full self-driving that you can not only own in your own car, but also have in these cyber cabs. I am on record as thinking that's unlikely. It is, sure, we can drive with only vision, but we're not that safe. A LiDAR is a capability that we don't have. That really does allow for safe driving. And I think we should expect that if we're going to let robots do our driving for us, they shouldn't just be as good as we are, they should be better.
Do you think, by the way, that caller and his enthusiasm for the technology, is that typical, or is that an anomaly in terms of how people feel about self-driving cars right now?
Oh, I encounter that enthusiasm everywhere I go. And so when I say mean things about Tesla, people get really mad, and I forgive them for that, because that is the enthusiasm that that caller just evinced, which is once you've had a car handle the driving task for you, realizing that it's driving better than you ever did, but it's also giving you that time back to relax or to focus on other things, it is wonderful. It feels magical or strange the first time, but once you've done it 3 or 4 times, it's just like, this is how it should always be. The only danger is as I've tried to hint, is that our caller he said he was on the road for hours. I hope he was maintaining I hope he wasn't calling you while actually supposed to be monitoring the road, because these systems are good, but they still absolutely rely on Teslas for a human fallback driver. And if you can be seduced into not giving full attention, that has led to, I'm afraid, loss of life in some instances up to now. That's why Waymo is better, because it really never requires human input. And so that is the standard we should be reaching for and hoping for in our cities, I think.
Well, and when you look at the statistics right now, I think it's around 40,000 people in the United States die in car crashes driven by humans in every single year in this country. A reminder to follow us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts if you aren't already. We'll be right back with more of Andrew Miller on autonomous vehicles on the follow-up. Welcome back to the follow-up. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're talking about autonomous vehicles with Andrew Miller, who is the host of the Changing Lanes Substack. And on our live show, and we were just talking about safety, we heard from someone who had suffered a brain injury in a car accident 15 years ago, who couldn't wait to have access to these vehicles to get around. And we also heard from this caller on our voicemail.
Hi, my name is Rose. I'm calling from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And my comment is about autonomous vehicles working for people with disabilities. So having like a motorized power wheelchair that's quite heavy. Uber has sort of taken over the market here, which reduces the number of cabs that actually have like ramps for people with disabilities. I live about 20 minutes from the airport. To get a ride from my house to the airport, it was like over $300 because I couldn't find any cab company, so I had to find a specialized cab company that would drive me there. So I'm wondering about opportunity for that kind of vehicle to be autonomous, or like if that could be a solution to some like mobility transfer situations where people are not able to drive a car and can maybe have a lot more independence.
Andrew, will self-driving vehicles make a difference for people with disabilities?
I would say they absolutely can if we make the right decisions. So if right now an Uber, because Uber doesn't control its fleet, you can't guarantee that you're going to get an Uber that's got a chairlift, or an Uber that's at the other end of the spectrum that's got a car seat built in, or any sort of facility for riders with anything other than the most straightforward needs. But with robotaxis, I've written about this before. One of the things our regulators could do is they could say to Waymo, or they could say to the Tesla Cybercab, or they could say to Zoox, which is the Amazon robotaxi company, absolutely, you can operate in our city. But for every 10 vehicles, you've got to have one with a chairlift. You've got to have one with a car seat. You've got to have one with some other feature. Or for every 10 vehicles you deploy in the downtown, you've got to have 2 that are in this neighborhood, or all sorts of things. You can specify as the regulator the requirements of operating in the city. And because the robotaxi firm owns the fleet, you can specify very granular requirements on them that you could never do in others. And that's got an awful lot of potential to help people who are with disabilities, or the elderly, or anyone with some sort of special needs as part of their mobility requirements.
When you talk about regulators making demands on these companies, who has the upper hand right now? Do the companies, do they have a lot of hurdles to get through when they want to expand into a new place or do something new? Or are the cities and towns just so excited to have them that they'll give them whatever they want?
It actually depends on what city, what state you're in. It saddens me immensely that what we would call blue cities, the cities that purportedly are progressive and care most about the most vulnerable and their needs, tend to be the most implacably hostile to this technology. So we've seen it in Boston, we've seen it in New York. Seattle's been a little bit better, but they're also making very high hoops to get through. Washington, D.C., we've been waiting for several years to get it through because they want a staff report, and staff have just not gotten around in 3 years to producing that report. Conversely, in red cities and states, so
Phoenix,
your
Dallas,
Phoenix,
Austin, Houston, right?
Places where those places are like, absolutely, come on in. It's a free market. It's a free country. We welcome the competition. So we really do seem to be an emerging split between the red cities, red states, blue cities, and blue states over this technology.
Although I will say that the other side of that is that Los Angeles and San Francisco, 2 very blue cities, do have a lot of robotaxis going around at this point. But I do remember, when I was in Boston when marijuana started to become legal in the United States, and in Massachusetts, they said anybody you can now have recreational marijuana, but the town has to say yes. And basically, like, none of the towns wanted it at the end of the day. So they said, oh, it's legal, but you can't actually get it anywhere.
Well, that is what you were seeing. Is it's where there are blue cities, you get the states doing overrides. California has made it very clear it doesn't matter what LA or San Francisco think, robotaxis will be permitted. LA really didn't like that, but they got overruled. Boston is in the process of being overruled by Massachusetts in the same way. The state is not going to let cities keep this technology out. And I think, that's something that, just like we've seen with housing, often cities are much more interested in preserving the way things are than opening up the way things could be.
I've seen, though, that President Trump has had some skepticism about self-driving vehicles. Is the federal government, is the Trump administration pro or anti? Right? Are they being friendly to the companies?
Well, yeah, President Trump, I don't think even his biggest fans can predict from week to week what his settled views on any question are. There was some thought that that period when he was best friends with Elon Musk, that would allow for a lot of very permissive legislation. That hasn't happened. What has happened is there's two bills in Congress right now. I think they're both more or less stalled, but one bill is very much an industry-favored bill, and what that bill is trying to do is set up a sense that there are certain standards that the federal government will enforce, and as long as vehicles can meet these standards, then they can't be overruled by states below. So it's not a complete giveaway. It just opens up. It raises the limits on the number of vehicles you can deploy in a given jurisdiction, allows you to charge more. The key things that they do is force companies to be very open and transparent about their safety, the incidents that they're involved with. This is something that Waymo is already pretty good at. So one might argue this is a form of regulatory capture. Waymo is a set a standard. It's going to force everyone else to live up to it. But from a consumer point of view, absolute transparency on safety is what I want. I think that's an appropriate standard to hold them to.
All right, let's get to one more caller. Listen to this.
Hi, my name is Jim, and I'm calling from Indiana. And my thought on this is one of the hardest things you can do is discuss with your parents when they get older, taking their keys away. But I tell my kids that in 20 years, when I'm at that age, hopefully I'm not going to worry about that. I can just get in my autonomous car and say, take me to the store, take me to church, take me to my granddaughters, and no one's going to take my keys away. Thanks.
I hadn't really thought about that, but it's true. You won't have to take, dad's keys away anymore because he can just get into a self-driving vehicle in 20 years.
There's so many constituencies or communities that all benefit from this technology when it's widespread. The elderly who are not in a position to be able to drive anymore. We heard earlier from the caller who's got mobility needs and needs special equipment. Young children. It is explicitly against Waymo's code of conduct or user regulations to put minors in the car, but parents are absolutely putting they're putting their kids in a Waymo because they'd rather have the Waymo chauffeur their kid across town than A, do it themselves, or B, rely on an Uber driver who they aren't vetted. They trust the Waymo. So anyone who is not sort of an able-bodied adult with a license and access to their private car, this app opens up whole new worlds of trips that they can take. And cheaply, affordably, and safely. It really is got immense potential to make our transportation system so much better.
What question are we not asking about it that you think we should be asking about it before it's too late?
I mentioned earlier in our conversation, Jeremy, that absent any serious move on our part, congestion is going to get much, much worse. That's just supply and demand. If you make the supply of cheap rides much greater all of a sudden, demand's going to rise to meet it. What I think cities need to do is we're going to need to have some sort of congestion charge, and a particular kind of congestion charge. Right now, there's no barrier to a robotaxi company driving a car around all day with no one in it. Like, it drops someone off, it's just going to roll on the streets until it gets another hail and then go pick that person up. So then you've got essentially the streets warehousing vehicles with no human in them at all. That is a terrible misuse of the streets, and yet it's so obviously going to happen. There's a very simple solution, which is we say, all right, any vehicle, you could start with just the robotaxis, but you could make this human vehicles too. If you have 4 people in the car, you pay a quarter for every mile you travel. But if you've got 3, you pay 50 cents. If you've got 2, 75. If you got 1, $1. And if you've got none, I don't know, $2, $5.
Right.
Like, the economists can tell us what the numbers are, but it should absolutely be the case that it is expensive to move a car around with no one in it. So that there's an incentive to avoid that sort of empty congestion.
It is always crazy to me when you are on a highway and they have a high occupancy vehicle lane, an HOV lane next to you, and there are only a few people in it because everybody is driving by themselves. On a busy trafficked highway is how few people travel around with more than one person in the vehicle. Everybody that comes on this show gets to make a prediction. I'm actually very interested in what yours is because you're thinking about the future all the time.
So I'm going to make a prediction that's a little bit offbeat, but we've talked a lot about Tesla Motors, and I say it grieves me when I make Tesla fans mad by saying things they don't want to hear. But sometimes you got to call it like you see it. I think Tesla's a wonderful car maker, but Mr. Musk has said Tesla's future is just as much going to be in humanoid robots. Like, he had the same event where he showed off the Cybercab. He also showed off the Optimus robot, like the idea that we'll all have a robotic butler. No, I will fearlessly predict that will never happen. That will never happen. There is no competitive advantage that Tesla Motors has to make a robot that can also chop an onion and sweep your front step. And everyone seems to think that it's going to happen. I don't understand why anyone believes that's true. It is never going to happen.
No C3PO for all, I guess. Andrew Miller, author of the book, The End of Driving, as well as the Changing Lanes Substack. Thank you so much.
No, it has been my pleasure.
And thanks for listening to The Follow-Up. It was produced by Harrison Patino. Our next middle episode is coming just in the next few days. It is going to be asking you if you would move for lower taxes. Follow us if you aren't already. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I'll talk to you soon.